Our daughter ended her life at 24 due to depression. If someone is determined to end their life, how can one change their mind? Oh, well, first of all, I'm very sorry about that. That's a terrible thing. Look, I had this friend, sorry. There's been a lot of depression in our family, so it's a question that cuts close to the bone. Anyways, I had this friend, a friend of my parents, and her granddaughter committed suicide, She was just beating herself up about that. What could have I done? What could have I done differently? This is the problem with suicide. It leaves everybody behind thinking, oh my God, what could have I done? I could have treated the person better. I could have listened. I could have been there. It's like, and she was just beating herself up about this, really feeling that she wasn't a useful person, that she'd failed as a grandmother. She's a really good person, And so I went for a walk with her, and I said, and she's married, and she likes her husband, and he's a really good guy. And I said, look, you're blaming yourself for your granddaughter's suicide. It's like, are you blaming your husband? Are you sitting him down and telling him what a useless bastard he was as a grandfather because his granddaughter committed suicide and how he failed completely? She said, no, I'd never do that. So I said, well, don't do it to yourself. No. Depression is a terrible thing. And many, many, many things cause it, and we don't understand. We understand some of them, but lots of them we don't understand at all. Sometimes people get depressed because they're really sick. We know that depression can be an inflammatory disease. It might be associated with autoimmune dysfunction. There's lots of reasons that people get depressed, and depressed people can go places that are so dark you just cannot imagine it. And it isn't necessarily the case that you can always rescue someone, but drowning yourself in the aftermath of a suicide is not helpful. So there's a good room for self-forgiveness there, maybe you did some things you shouldn't have done that were reprehensible and all of that, but you don't want to beat yourself up. Remember the presumption of innocence, right? Innocent until proven guilty. And you have to apply that to yourself. I think there are times when people are so depressed that there isn't anything that anyone can do. And the depressed person thinks, and this is probably the worst part of it, the depressed person thinks, everywhere I look, it's nothing but catastrophe. And I can't see any way out of it. I can't see any path forward whatsoever. And then they think as well, and maybe it's the combination of these two thoughts that really make people suicidal. It's like, it's hopeless. It isn't going to get any better. No matter where I turn, there's no escape. The suffering is unbearable. And I'm absolutely no use whatsoever to anyone. It would be better for everyone if I was just gone, because if I'm not so much of a burden now that it's going to destroy their life, then I'm going to be that much of a burden in the future. And so it's hard to imagine what that's like for people, but it's dreadful. And there's lots of ways you get there. And so you can listen to people. You can desperately encourage them to seek the help they need. Like I've seen antidepressants work miracles on very, very many people. Now, they don't work for everyone, and they're not a panacea, but, they have side effects and all of that. But one of the side effects of untreated depression is that you kill yourself, and there is no recovery from that. And the probability is actually rather high. So you can go to war with them about antidepressants. If the person can't get out of their depression and they're suicidal, it's like, what do they have to lose? 1 month on antidepressants. They'll know. Well, they might have to experiment longer, because it would depend on, some people respond better to some classes of antidepressants than the others. It's worth having a war with someone if they're in dire straits and they won't do everything they can to get better. ECT works, electroconvulsive therapy works for intractable depression. It's a terrible thing to contemplate, but the modern versions of ECT aren't. One flew over the cuckoo's nest. And again, it's like, there's no coming back from death. So, look, it isn't clear. You can't rescue everyone. People get sick and they die. And sometimes the way they die looks like it's depression. Depression is a multifaceted phenomenon. You can be there for them. You can listen. You can watch. You can intervene. You can try to understand. You can hold them accountable. You can do all of those things. But everyone has their own destiny, you know, and you're not omnipotent. And so sometimes a catastrophe occurs, like your daughter's. And then you should try to drag the least amount of misery forward that you can. Once you recover from your grief. Yeah. How much trouble would you want there not to be? It's a weird question, right? Because you want to have something to contend with. You want to have something that forces from you the best that you have. And so you have to have real problems. It's something like that. Would you dispense with all your real... You could just lay down on a bed and have pablum infused into your mouth, you know, if all your problems were solved. And so maybe you want difficult problems that you can solve, something like that, because there's some... I don't know what it is about it. There's the overcoming and the growth that comes along with that. There's something about the nobility of the enterprise. You certainly see that when you go about having children, for example, which is, you know, the psychological literature is quite clear. If you do moment-to-moment comparisons of people who have kids and people who don't have kids, the people who don't have kids are happier. And so psychologists who tend to get things wrong even when they make intelligent discoveries like that one, immediately, some of them, jump to the conclusion that because happiness is the goal, that, well, there's something about children that, you know, make you unhappy, and that's not good. It's like, well, wait a second. Maybe that's the wrong metric. It's like, of course you're less happy once you have children because you have to worry about them. You know, my neighbor down the street, who's a very smart woman, said to me once, you can only be as happy as your unhappiest child. And which I thought was really good, you know, that's really smart. But then it isn't, well, if having children doesn't make you happy, the answer isn't don't have children. It's like, don't be so stupid about being happy. That's the answer. It's because there's a nobility in the pursuit, right? And of course, now you're responsible. You know, you have a new baby, you think, especially if you're a new parent, you think, what the hell is this? And what am I going to do with it? You know, it's like, and then you're done for the rest of your life. You never sleep properly again because you're going to be worried about this creature that you have to take care of. But like, what the hell good are you if you're not doing that, or something else equally difficult? Because you just haven't been called out yet, unless you take on a responsibility like that. The idea that life is, you know, that happiness is the purpose of life. It's like, great for happiness, man. If it comes along, you should be thrilled that it's visiting you. But the notion that that's what you should pursue, that's the weakest possible notion. First of all, as soon as something terrible happens to you, you're done. It's like, life is to be happy. It's like, well, now you have cancer. So how's that? How's the happiness thing working out for you now? Or maybe it's not you, you know, maybe it's your father that has Alzheimer's disease or some damn thing. And, you know, it's like, it's a rare person that doesn't have some catastrophe one person away from them. It's like, life is to be happy. That's not right. And we can at least derive that from these stories. That isn't what they say at all. God's perfectly happy in the stories to grant the people with whom he forms a covenant happiness and prosperity, but there's never a word that that's the purpose. The rule is aim high and get your bloody act together. That's the rule, and establish this contractual covenant with the ultimate ideal, and that will see you through the catastrophes. And that's a much more mature way of looking at life as far as I'm concerned, because all you have to do is have your eyes half open and you see that the fundamental reality of life is tragedy and suffering. That's inescapable. That doesn't mean that it makes life unbearable or that it makes being something that shouldn't have existed. Right? That isn't what it means. But it means that you have to contend with it and you have to get ready. And the willingness to adopt responsibility for yourself and for others is the precondition for that. And then maybe if you do that properly, then now and then you get some happiness. You know, you can sit at the end of a day and you have half an hour where your conscience is clear and there's nothing that you need to be doing, and you can relax and think, you know, that's all right. Things are okay, and thank God for that. And that's maybe where you get your happiness. So
Yeah, that's something. That's growing up, man, obviously. And to not know that, and to not be taught that. Like, everyone should be taught that. It's so obvious.